Awesome. Hello, hello. Thank you so much, Carl, for joining me. We are doing our weekly updates. So many things happening in immigration law. So we decided just to give some weekly updates to our clients because they're always calling, like, what happened? What happened? So we can just tell them, okay, this is what happened. You can check
Yes.
and give some information. So, Carl, how was your week? Was it a crazy week?
I think crazy is an understatement. It's been so much, so many changes. It's
Hmm.
funny how they say, so many things change, but everything stays the same.
Yeah,
It feels
yeah.
like that. It's like it's been a
Hmm.
lot, but it's still steady that we're here. We're being
Easy.
a resource to our community, and we're trying to be helpful. So with all the
Hmm.
changes, we're still here, steady, strong, fighting the good fight.
That's right. That's right. So I think with the biggest thing this week was, I would say, the asylum fees for us as a firm. Because we kind of realized it last week and we said, wait a minute. They said all these fees must be paid by the end of the fiscal year. The end of the fiscal year is September 30th. And
Right.
then we realized that it felt like even the government was behind on this one because they didn't even open the link to make the payment until the 23rd of September.
Right.
So clients were calling, they wanted to make the payment, they were asking us to make the payment for them. And then the website was basically collapsing the
Yeah.
whole like 2 days, like from the 29th and the 30th, the website wasn't working and it kept stopping. And it was very frustrating for our team because our team was trying to make the payments for our clients. Finally, we told our clients, maybe you should just make the payment because we didn't want to overpromise. And
Right.
and then there were clients calling that did not have their case in court that are affirmative, and they were like, well, where do I pay? When do I have to pay? So it wasn't until I think it was yesterday that the link just opened on USCIS for the payments for USCIS.
Yeah.
So that's started now with that payment. But even there, like the link is there, but when you go to try to pay, sometimes it says you can't pay. You have to wait until they notify you. So it's not 100% open, but at least the link is there because the thing that's frustrating is that they made this announcement saying, okay, everybody needs to pay, but they didn't really kind of communicate to the people that you need to
Right.
pay
Yes.
or else your case is considered abandoned. So
Yeah.
that part was kind of, left, I guess, on hush hush a little bit. So I
Hmm.
think all the immigration attorneys realized it, and everybody was posting like, "Make your payment! Don't forget to make your payment," because technically, if you don't make the payment and your case is considered abandoned, that's what the big ugly bill said.
Yeah.
So it's leaving you in that situation where your case could be abandoned just for non-payments. And now what we even noticed was even judges were starting to ask, did you make the payment? Did you make the payment? So
Yeah.
we had one client that had their final hearing and the judge asked, well, did you make the payment? So it's really important, that payment.
Exactly. They're
Hmm.
almost, making it's almost analogous to like a failure to litigate. So if you're not
Hmm.
making your payment to keep your asylum case active, then they're
Hmm.
counting it as you're failing to litigate your case. You're not making your claims, and therefore, all right,
Hmm.
you have abandoned this case. We're going to dismiss it outright. And
Exactly.
it is a tough experience, especially for the clients, because there's just so much that they have to learn, especially
Mhm.
for those that are still learning the language. So if
Mhm.
English is not your first language, and then now all
Mhm.
these changes are being made, is making it very tough to
Mhm.
properly and timely make these payments, and
Yeah.
it's difficult, but. We're doing our best. The immigration attorneys within the community, we're trying to keep everybody,
Mhm.
abreast with all the changes and help however we can. I was
Mhm.
making payments yesterday too, trying to help.
Everybody, like our finance team
Yeah,
was like collapsing. They were like, "Oh my god, like everybody's calling.
yeah,
Can you make my payment? Can you make my payment?" And then like the finance team was like couldn't handle it. So then the
right,
other team started helping, and sales and the attorneys and the legal team like, "Okay, we'll make the payment," because it was just so many
right,
phone calls that we were getting. But really, like what I was telling people was, whether you're our client or not, just make sure you make that payment because we didn't
exactly.
want people to basically lose their status over $100.
Yeah,
So,
yeah,
but now
exactly.
at least, thank God, that's settled. So, I mean, it's not settled, but at least
Mhm.
the website is open. Today I heard the website was working much better. And hopefully, my understanding is there's probably going to be like a grace period because the website itself shut down on the day of the last payment, which was the 30th. The website shut down several times, so people
Yes.
were not able to make their payments. So hopefully they take that into consideration. And I heard it's still accepting payments. So, and then for the affirmative people, they can continue to go on with their payments.
Right.
But so that was, I think, the big news for asylum from that perspective for this week. But there's other big news from the business perspective.
Yeah.
So you want let's talk about H1Bs.
Yeah. So there was some updates happening there. Like, what's the big H-1B change that USCIS announced?
Well, USCIS, basically the H-1Bs is something. It's a type of visa that is used for people that are highly educated to come to the United States and work in the United States. People sometimes might say like, well, they're taking jobs from American citizens, but most of the time these people are people that are like engineers,
Right.
doctors, like high level people, tech people. A lot of people that work in technology, Silicon Valley, are
Hmm.
coming for these jobs because there's a lack of people in the United States that are capable of doing these type of jobs. Not as many people are maybe have like, let's say masters or PhDs in computer science and computer technology. So you have a lot of foreigners, and with this, they're able to get a job. And there's a lottery every year. Normally, the lottery, I believe, is about 60,000 people that they're able to, people, more than 60,000 people apply. But if you get selected within those 60,000 people, then that company can give you a visa and you can stay and work in the United States with that company. I believe it's up to 3 years. So all of a sudden, out of the blue, the administration announced that the fee is going to go up for the H-1B. Now, the fee was never that cheap, but now it's like they put it at $100,000. A
Yes.
$100,000. So
Yeah.
people were freaking out. And I know someone personally who had gotten approved just this past year for the H-1B, and people were freaking out saying, oh my God, does this mean now my company has to pay $100,000? Well, the reason that they're saying is because it's to protect the American worker and to force companies to get people from the United States. But if anybody who works in business law or whenever you do a labor certification or you work with the Department of Labor, their job is to protect the American worker. So
Right.
first and foremost, what they usually will do is check and see if the job that you're applying for is a job where there's not enough people in the United States that are capable of doing that job, or there's not enough people in the United States that want to do that job. Like it could be something in the agricultural world, or a job that's really difficult and not a lot of people want to work in that field, and they could get a job doing that. So the companies are able to get workers because of those type of jobs. So thank God it just came out because I heard there were even people on planes that were trying to get off, that they were going home to visit their families and they were trying to get off planes when they heard about this. But they said this is supposedly going to apply for new applications. So applications going forward, not necessarily for people that are applying now. So it should be for new applications.
Yes.
So if you had already applied last year and you got approved, you should not be in the category of people that get this $100,000 fine. Well, it's not a fine; it's a fee, but
Yes.
it feels
um,
like a fine.
it feels like one, and that's one of the things that we were trying to reiterate and let everybody know that I think this is one of the areas that it's not a retroactive action
Mhm.
that's being taken. It's more so, like you
Exactly.
said, it's for the newer application. So if you
Mhm.
already started your H-1B process, if you already had your application, if you received your approval already, this wouldn't
Mhm.
apply to you. So for now, you're in the safe zone. So
Exactly,
you can
exactly.
continue.
And so every year they have, and I remember, I think under the Biden administration, they had tried to expand the number from 60,000 and make it more because
Mhm.
companies were complaining that we don't have enough software engineers, we don't have enough. People who can really work in technology and things like that. So we need more. Now, the community they say that's going to be the most affected by this is the Indian community,
Yes.
because there's a lot of people from India that come here on H-1B visas. Or another method of getting the visa is you come here on a student visa, and then
Mhm.
you start working in you work in you go to school. After you go to school, you do like an internship. And then usually while you're doing the internship, the company really likes you, and the company says, okay, let's try to do this H-1B lottery. And if you get selected, you're able to stay with the company, and continue to work with that company. So, pros and cons. I know, from talking to people and working with this type of thing, some people don't like the H-1B because they feel like they're kind of tied to that company, because it's not that easy. Once you have the H-1B, you can't really leave the company that easily, unless you get another company that applies for you and that company does the H-1B for you. But you're kind of tied to whatever company has is the H-1B, and it doesn't necessarily lead to citizenship right away. Now, the way you can get citizenship is a labor certification. So that, Carl and I were talking about that. That's a different process, but basically the company could decide to give you a labor certification. Right, Carl? So at the end of the labor certification, what's the result? You can get, your path to citizenship. So,
Exactly. And
so that's. Mhm.
another thing with the labor certification that's very helpful is it helps to combat that argument that it's taking jobs away from Americans, because part of the
Mhm.
labor certification is advertising and showing that this job was posted, it was
Yes.
put out
Hmm.
for all those qualified individuals to be able to apply
Yes.
for it, but due
Hmm.
to the the low turnout and the low applications from American citizens, that's
Yes.
why now the company has to look elsewhere, look outside of the U.S. to find these qualified
Hmm.
individuals. So
Exactly, 100%.
that's a nice
That's
safeguard.
true, because that shows you, like, to get the labor certification. At the end of it, the company. I always try to explain it to my clients like this: it's like a family petition, but instead of like your spouse petitioning for you, a husband or a wife, it's the company who's petitioning for you.
Right,
And then at the end of the process, you still get a green card, but the company has to do the paperwork. The company has to say, I need this person. I don't have enough employees like this, or their job is something very specific and I haven't been able to find somebody. And like Carl said, the very first step in the process of a labor certification is advertising. And you going through, first of all, you have to go to the Department of Labor. You start your process with the Department of Labor before you even go to USCIS. You start with the Department of Labor, and one of the things that you have to do is show that you have made efforts to advertise and look for people, and you haven't been able to find anybody to fill that position. So, I know a lot of people in the tech world, a lot of companies are upset about this $100,000 fee. And also a lot of people, specifically, I think from India, because there are so many like tech people there that are, really good with the technology, or they're studying that specifically in their country. And
yeah,
they come here and they're able to get jobs with that. But there is a limitation, and it doesn't lead to a path to citizenship unless you like find another company that petitions for you. But
right.
sometimes you do, So I know a lot of people were upset about that. So, but that labor certification, hopefully we'll see what happens with it. Because I think a lot of big companies are gonna be upset with about this, and maybe they might lobby to change that. I don't know, because we know immigration is constantly changing.
It is, and like even with a lot of those changes that's happening, one of the other changes that's happened is with military naturalization. Uh,
Hmm.
so
Hmm.
even most recently, USCIS they clarified that the uncharacterized discharges that
Hmm.
occurred on or after August 1st, 2024,
Hmm.
they no longer count as honorable for naturalization.
Yeah, yeah.
So
That's a little bit of bad news, I would say, for the military people, because the great thing with the naturalization for military, usually you have to wait 5 years after being a legal permanent resident to become a naturalized U.S. citizen. But there was always this exception for military people that you could do it like after a year. I think it's after 1 year if we're in peacetime, and
right,
it could be after 1 day if we're in wartime. So if we're at war and you're in a war zone, you could maybe be active war, active duty during a short time, and they could let you skip that 5 years that you have to wait, and you could go straight to get your naturalization. If it's peacetime, it's 1 year, but either way you're saving a lot of time, because instead of waiting 5 years.
right,
But the difference, what attorney Carl was just talking about, is that the honorable discharge, of course you can always do it, but if you get a uncharacterized discharge, that usually means that it's not a dishonorable discharge, but it could mean that you didn't complete your time in the military. So it could mean like, some people join the military and after a couple months they're like, this is not for me, I don't want to stay. And then if they didn't do, at least let's say they're 6 months in the military and finish their boot camp and everything, they could get like an uncharacterized discharge. And with that, that means that you didn't get an honorable discharge, so you didn't complete everything. But usually they would still honor that naturalization, where after a year you could get naturalization. So now that's the big change for military personnel. You're not going to be able to get that naturalization if you have that uncharacterized discharge. So it has to really be like an honorable discharge. If it's dishonorable, forget it.
Right. Hey, yeah, exactly.
Forget about that.
Yeah.
But if it's dishonorable, forget it. But if it's uncharacterized, just maybe you joined and then you're like, I don't know if I want to stay.
Right.
I have my brother-in-law, he was a Marine for like 8 years,
Nice.
and his wife was a Marine for 20 years, and she was actually a drill sergeant in Paris Island. And she was telling me like it's tough. She said they're tough on them on purpose in the beginning because they want the weak ones to drop out.
Right.
So it's very tough. So I can understand why. I mean, I couldn't do it. I know I couldn't do it. I'd be in there like, what? I got to get up at 4 in the morning. Bye. I'm out.
Right.
I respect
Yeah.
the military very much because I could
Yeah.
not do it. But I understand why somebody might say, like, I don't know if I want to do this. This is really, tough. But
Right.
they are tough on them in the beginning. So but at least you still had that advantage because you tried and you could still maybe do that naturalization. But now they're taking that possibility away. So that's like a little bit of bad news for this week. We try to stay positive, but sometimes we can't.
Yeah. So again, it's all different classes. So for those
Mhm,
that if it was before August 1st, 2024, you may still qualify. If it is
mhm,
after August 1st, 2024 that you receive that uncharacterized discharge, you may not qualify. But yeah, again, we always say, it's not the end all be all. There's always
mhm,
alternate forms of relief, and
mhm.
speak to an attorney. We can go through the options and see how we can help you.
Exactly, exactly. Well, we have like I think a bit of good news this week.
Yes.
There's something in the works for our DACA people.
Yes. Yes.
So, there's a lot of discussion about DACA, and hopefully DACA's coming back.
Yeah.
We're
It,
hoping and praying.
it
So,
would be great. It's a great program, and hopefully, what's happening in the circuit court in Texas, that can be resolved. And
mhm,
it goes to play in what's happening within the nation because especially like
mhm,
with TPS, so with the courts, the cases that are in the circuit courts, where we get nationwide injunctions based state, this can have the same
yeah.
implications as well. So if the precedent continues the same way, then and we can get the DACA reinstated in Texas, then then we'll have it be reinstated nationwide, and hopefully
Mhm.
that happens for TPS as well.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, Texas is a tough state because, like, they're usually harder on immigration in general.
Yeah.
So, I know there's in the works to maybe bring back DACA because basically, if people don't know, about 4 years ago during the first administration, I remember, I don't know if it was under Biden or Trump, but there was a judge in Texas who basically said that there would be no more DACA, that Congress didn't have the right to do DACA or something like, or I think Obama, they didn't have, they said basically like they overreached. There was
I would agree.
overreach in the planning and the decision for DACA. So it's basically saying you went above what you're allowed to do.
Right.
So because of that, I had a client at the time very upset that we were filing DACA for him. We had just filed his paperwork, and this case came out in Texas where the judge said no more DACA. But
Mm.
basically, what they said is that people that already had DACA for many, many years, they can continue with DACA. But those who were just applying for the first time, they were no longer going to process anymore. So if some people don't know, DACA is deferred action on childhood arrivals. So basically, it was something that was started during the Obama administration, where they said children that had come with their parents when they were minors, like little kids. Some people have been here since 3 years old, and their parents brought them here either across the border, or maybe they came legally and their parents overstayed, and now they're growing up and they're getting to their teenage years and they want to go to college, and then they kind of get stuck where they can't go to college, they can't get a job, they don't have a work permit. So they had started this program saying deferred action means basically that ICE will not take action against you,
Right.
because they said these kids are innocent, and many of them with that were able to get a work permit, and they
Hmm.
were able to get some type of a legal status very similar to TPS. So
Right.
it's a temporary protective status. You kind of and you have a work permit through that. So it was great because a lot of these DACA kids were able to get a job, were able to go to school, um, and that was very helpful. But when the judge said that, it's kind of been frozen in place, and only people that already had it were able to get it. So they're talking about allowing it again, but you have to prove that you've been here since you were a child and you have no criminal background. That's another very
Yes.
strict thing with DACA and
Mm.
TPS. You can lose it like that if you commit a crime.
Yeah.
So boom, like if people think like, oh, these are all these things we're doing for immigrants. No, you have to be like an angel.
Yes.
I would say you have to be an angel if you're an immigrant, because any criminal record, something that and Carl can talk more about this,
Mhm.
but something that can be okay for someone who's a U.S. citizen, for an
Right.
immigrant could have completely different effects. Can you talk a little bit about that, Carl? Because he knows a little bit more about that than I do.
Sure, definitely. Like within our Haitian culture, like for we say that they gotta marcher SS. That means you gotta walk
Mhm.
on the straight and narrow, and
Yes.
there's no deviating from that.
Mm-hmm.
Because there's an area that we've talked about that I do a lot of work in with the criminalization.
Mm-hmm.
Within the criminal, something may be legal on the state level, but if it's not legal on the federal, it can still affect you in your case.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
With crimes as well, whether it be your first time, second, or 15th, there are some graces that the immigration may give you, but if you have two misdemeanors or one felony, or what they consider crimes involving moral turpitude, uh,
Mm-hmm.
these things can really affect your immigration case
Mm-hmm.
negatively. So you don't want these things to adversely affect your case and make it a much more difficult process, because immigration could be tough to begin with, and you don't want to make
Mm-hmm.
it even harder for yourself going forward.
Mm-hmm.
So with certain crimes, and then especially with the passage of the Lake and Riley Act, that can make your
Yes.
immigration process even harder. So like
Mm-hmm.
you said, it's almost like you got to be a saint on earth while
Mm-hmm.
going through your process, because
Yeah.
you want to make sure that all these safeguards, they don't come against you, that
Mm-hmm.
the laws don't work against you, and that you're able to just go through your process, continue with everything, get your visa, naturalize, and just go through the process completely, and
Yeah.
be able to take that oath at the end of the day.
Carl, let's talk about something fun. Let's talk about weed. Because I've had
Yes.
clients tell me, well, I live in Colorado where weed is legal. Is that going to
Hmm.
affect my immigration case? Or I live in whatever state. And then I'm like, I will let Carl answer that, because the law,
Right.
I'm sorry, the marijuana laws for the state are different than the marijuana laws for the federal. So go ahead, Carl. Let's answer that question, because a lot of people have
Yes, so
asked.
it can affect your case because although it may be legal within your state, under federal law, it is still not legalized. So immigration is based off of a federal law. And with
Mm-hmm.
federal law, if there are violations of federal laws and statutes, so weed violations, they will affect your immigration case. So
Mm-hmm.
although the state may not pursue something against you, immigration, ICE, they can, DHS can, because under their purview, they're working under federal law, and they have all authority under the federal law to charge you for possession, especially if it's possessions over I believe 30 grams,
Mm-hmm.
and that can definitely adversely affect your cases and make it really hard for you to be able to get a permit, get TPS, get DACA. Um, your green card, so any of the visas that you may be applying for, family petitions can be
Exactly.
very difficult at that
Student
point.
visas.
Student
They,
visas, especially.
yes, all that stuff. Somebody had a situation and he was on a student visa and he got his student visa revoked. And then he had a regular like criminal attorney who didn't know crimmigration, just like
Right.
immigration and criminal, and how
Mhm.
the criminal can affect your immigration status. And the immigration attorney said, yeah, yeah, just take a plea deal. You know, you take a plea and you'll be fine. So he took the plea and he pled guilty, and he didn't try to fight the case. And then they took away his student visa. And he
Right.
was like, well, if I knew, I would have tried to fight the case, because I think either the weed didn't belong to him, it belonged to his friend or something like that. But he was like, well, I didn't know. The attorney told me that. And I said, this is where you need a crimmigration attorney.
Exactly.
Not
Yes.
just, and there's not a criminal attorney, because
Mhm.
sometimes they don't know that at the federal level, yes, being caught with weed, you know, at this amount of weed, that can cost you your student visa, and that was it. And it's very hard to get that type of visa back, a student visa especially. Like you have to
Yes.
be like, you know, really, really a saint when you're here on a student visa.
Yes, exactly. And
Mhm.
even then, like as I previously mentioned, like with the passage of the Lake and Riley Act, that makes it very difficult, especially if there are theft involved crimes or like financial crimes,
Mhm.
because it also changed it now where it's not only convictions, but just the charges being brought against you too
Yes.
can really affect your immigration case.
Mhm.
So you want to just, like we said, walk the straight and narrow, Mashi SS, be an angel
Yep.
here so that, the process, there's no difficulties with it because on a state
Mhm.
level, you'll be okay. But federal, where it's really important, that's
Mhm.
where that can really affect your immigration case and make it much harder when it should have been a smooth ride for you.
Exactly, exactly. So I'm going to talk about one more thing about business that came out this week. It's the H-2B visa. So the difference between the H-1B visa and the H-2B visa is H-2B is for non-professional workers. So it can be, and this affects Florida in particularly, because this is, you're talking about people that work in hotels, people that work in landscaping, people that work in the kitchen. So they're not necessarily like high level professionals like an H-1B, but
Right.
they get these seasonal jobs that could be for 6 to 8 months, and they're able to come to the United States and work in a hotel, let's say, and then go back to their country. So there's a cap, there's a certain amount that they give per year. And I remember the Biden administration had again discussed like raising the cap, because a lot of companies had complained, like, I need more workers. So the cap has already been reached for this year. And they're saying that it's not going to reopen until next fall.
Right.
So this is going to affect a lot of companies, especially in Florida. I remember hearing from like a guy, I think he was a manager of a hotel, like a resort in Florida,
Hmm.
and he was complaining about like, I need like these H2B workers. He
Hmm.
said because he needed a lot of landscaping, because the hotel had these beautiful grounds, flowers, and he said that every time he hired an American, they would work for a day and then they'd be out in the hot sun. And he said, first of all, they would take breaks all the time, like, and then second of all, he said they would be like, you know what, like, this is too hot. I don't want to do this job. And he said they
Yeah.
usually wouldn't last more than like a day or two. But he's like, man, I get my H2B workers and they come from all over. So a lot of them come from, Central America. There's
Right.
certain countries that are open to this, like they have to say your country is allowed, so it's not automatic. You have to, like,
Exactly.
recently they added Haiti, so that was
Mhm.
a big deal because Haiti wasn't on the list. So
Right.
now people from Haiti can come here. They have to apply through the company, but they can basically come here for, like, I think it's like 6 to 9 months and work. But this guy was like crying. He's like, man, like, I can't get Americans to do this job. So this is what I'm talking about when I say the Department of Labor has to check to see, is this a job that um, Americans are unable or unwilling to do? So it could be something that is unwilling,
That's
because
one, right.
it's not a hard job, but
Hmm.
it is a hard job. Like, it's
Right.
it's it's not something like, okay, maybe you're like, you have to have a PhD to do, but it's a hard job to be out there in the hot sun, especially the Florida sun,
Right.
for hours, like mowing the lawn, taking care of the flowers. It's a hard job, and a lot of people don't want to do it. So a lot of these big resorts, what they do is they go to an immigration attorney and then they try to get the H2B type of visas
Right.
for non high level. There's a word for it, non high level workers or something like that. But basically, it's these jobs that are in need, especially in that industry. And then they have seasonal, because in Florida, we do have seasonal times where, the summer, Christmas, Thanksgiving, there's more tourism.
Right.
So this is the cap has already been reached. I think that they're going to reduce the amount of people, maybe with the same mentality that they're like, well, we need to get more jobs for American citizens, which is fine. I'm 100% for that. But I do think that maybe the companies are the ones that might complain, and maybe
Yeah.
this can change because maybe they might lobby, they might go and say, hey, we try to get Americans, nobody wants to be out here in this hot sun, Florida
Hmm.
sun, or nobody wants to spend all day in the kitchen. So I don't
Yeah.
know. These are the type of things that could change. But this is the new policy, and they're basically cutting this so that it's already been reached the cap, and they are not gonna. I doubt they're gonna reopen it or increase it anymore until the fall of next year. So that is kind of for the business side. So I think for the asylum, we already talked about that, the fees, and then the crimmigration.
Yes.
But my favorite news is DACA. I really hope that DACA reopens because you have these kids that have been here since they were little, and I think that they should be able to work and everything. So you were mentioning Texas, so let me talk about
Yes.
that. The thing with Texas is Texas, man. So so
Texas.
there's a judge in Texas who said, I think they're not going to allow DACA people to have a work permit in
Right.
Texas. And that's the case that I think it came out today. The judge said, like, even if they approve DACA, they're still not going to be able to get a work permit and work in Texas. Like, Texas is
Hmm.
not going to recognize the work permit. So
Yeah.
now some people are talking about, well, maybe they should move out of Texas because if the government goes through with what they're talking about, which is starting DACA again, because right now it's only active for people that already had it and are just renewing it. But if they start DACA again for people that have been here since they were a child and they have to
Mhm.
show that they're good record and everything, now you're saying if you're in Texas, it doesn't matter, you still can't get a work permit. Like, it makes no sense. So, but I don't
Yeah.
know. I don't know what people are gonna do. Texas has always been very tough for immigrants. I don't know
Hmm.
why there's a big immigrant population. I tell my clients, I'm like, why? Like, why Texas?
Yeah.
Because because
Well,
the judges are
well,
really hard in Texas, and
with Texas
they're
too,
vicious judges,
they were getting with Texas too, they were getting a lot of like the H-2B visas there as well because there's a lot of
Yes,
seasonal work in Texas. So
in
a lot of,
Austin. Yeah.
yeah, so the
Hmm.
agriculture work is there, and
Hmm.
hospitality, tourism, that is there as
Hmm.
well in Texas. So that's been a hub, and kind of, so it's been great to get work and be able to get the H-2B visas there. And with the DACA case, it's very much so that it's like Texas won't recognize the work permit for you there, but it still leaves open the option for the individual to be able to move to another state. So
Hmm.
they can get the DACA approved and then just move to another state, and then
Oh yeah,
the
I
the
would do
work
it. I would
person
move.
would, yeah.
The
So
United States is a huge country.
right.
It's a
So
huge country. Each state is like its own country. If you compare the United States to like Europe, for example, each
right.
state is like its own mini country. So there's a lot of other states that you could move to and be able to live your life. But hopefully, because this was supposedly something that I remember both Democrats and Republicans had always agreed on, a
Mhm.
path to citizenship for DACA for kids that had been here, because many of these kids don't even speak their native language anymore.
Right.
Many of these kids like grew up here and all they know is English. All they know is their American, schools that they've attended. They may speak a little bit of Spanish or they may speak a little bit of other countries, because I don't want to say just Spanish because DACA is not just for Latin American. I know people from other countries that also have DACA. So it's for people that arrived here as children and have been kind of fallen out of status, and it's to protect them. But
Exactly.
hopefully, I'm really, really hopeful, and that is the good news that I'm going to try to stay positive about this week. And
Yes.
hopefully, my client, who I remember we had filed the DACA for him, and then this case came down. I'm praying and hoping that he's able to get his status because he's been here since he was a baby. So let's hope.
Yes. So
But
it's a sprinkle of good news here,
mhm,
and it's also reassuring to know that there are teams that are here. Just speaking with some other attorneys that are involved with ALA, the American Immigration Lawyers Association, and just hearing that everyone is buckling down. We're hankering down and just trying to work together and sharing resources to help each other out.
Yeah.
Like, even with like the DACA decision, we were talking a little bit, and then I got an email from another ILA attorney, like, "Hey, look, here's what's happening in DACA. Hey, look, here's what's happening now." And it's just,
That's
it's great.
wonderful.
It's great to have that resource and that network, and it's helpful to us, and it's also helpful to our clients because we're just always participating and sharing all the knowledge that we get.
Mm-hmm. Oh, that's wonderful. Well, I think that's it for us tonight. It's already been like 30 minutes. So we talked about a lot of topics. And of course, we're always here. And you can always send questions on our social media. We have Angie, who's always helping us. So she's answering those questions. But if there's something that you want to ask an attorney, you can always send a message on our social media or even to our email, contact at Claxton Law. And then if we are able to answer it during one of these lives, we will go ahead and do that. Okay. All right. So
All right.
have a great week, everybody. If anything new comes out or happens, probably next week, we'll try to give you some information and keep everybody as up to date as we are, which we're also trying to figure out what's going on. So, but whatever we learn, we'll try to share with the community. Okay.
Yes, we'll do.
All right, guys. Have a
Good
good
night,
day.
everyone.
Bye. Thank you
All
so
right.
much, Carl, for being with me tonight. Thank you.
Of course. Thanks for having me.